I got a quick one for us tonight, and hopefully some valid reflections here. Honestly, I don't know, so I'm going to give you what I got, and we can text in your votes or something like that. This has been a weird week. So this passage with obviously some cool little interesting tangents that we're not going to deal with is really back to one of the author's main themes, which is knowing. And we kind of said a few times the letter stands in contrast to the Gospel of John, which preceded it. And the Gospel of John is focused on believing. Believing. The letter is focused on knowing. The Gospel is introducing Jesus and the teachings of Jesus. And the letter is focused on the life that Jesus said was possible in that experience. So this letter is written to a more mature audience. They've been living with this now for a while as a community, and they've experienced this life that Jesus showed and said was possible, what he and they have come to call eternal life, with which the letter is chiefly concerned. And so the letter isn't about believing, but about knowing. It's about a way of deeply living, not about ideas, but about experiences. And part of the way we know this is that the opening line of the passage is this. Do not love in word or speech, but in action and truth. And we said a couple times over the last several weeks that this word truth in this letter is closer to our understanding of reality. It's not about ideas or concepts or ideologies or beliefs. It's better translated reality. I swear to God. I'm just going to quit that. We use the word reality to talk about people, objects, and events, right? Rather than abstract concepts, sort of concrete things. So for example, you wouldn't ask, is this stage true? You would ask, is the stage real? Yes, it's real. I'm standing on it. Over the last 18 months, we have watched in horror, and especially maybe Tuesday night, as things unfolded, many of us asked, is this real? Is this real? Are these events really happening? Is this what's going on? And these authors, when they talk about truth, that's what they mean. They mean reality in the real world, not abstract idea, belief. So when the author says, let us love in truth, he's not talking about an abstract category that rightly aligns with an ideology or theology. He's saying let's love in a way that's manifest in reality. Let our love be found in actions. Let our love be seen and tasted and touched and experienced and felt. And I think this means at least a few things. First, love is a verb and not a noun. We've probably all heard this. To love in word and speech is a noun, right? It's something that we talk about. To love in action, when love is manifest in reality, that's a verb. Secondly, love is a choice. It's not a feeling. It's not something we wait to feel and then we act on. It's a choice we make. And sure, we can hope that it results in some particular experience. Sometimes that is a feeling. Maybe it's a deep sense of fulfillment. It can be an experience of connectedness. It can even be a painful but rewarding surrender or sacrifice. But the thing is, if we wait for the feeling, we won't ever likely choose to do the work of love. But if we choose love, we open ourselves to the possibility, at least, of an experience with what this author refers to over and over as knowing. Knowing, which is back to where we started. Not to believe some things, theologically, philosophically, or ideologically about love, but to know love by loving. To know love by loving. That simple. Not to believe some ideas about life, whether here or after death, not some abstract disembodied form of what some people call spiritual life, but knowing life, knowing unconditional life by living. By living from this sort of deeper place, from life as an experience, life in the moment, present. It's a knowing, a life, a practice of love that's grounded in reality, that is manifest in concrete, tangible, messy stuff. Our everyday lives. That's where it shows up. And he gives some clarity on how we might lean into that experience. He concludes by saying, believe or trust in Jesus. And again, I think we need to be careful because we hear these words and they're loaded with especially the last 200 years of what the Christian tradition has meant. Believe or trust, we need to not read all sorts of ideological or theological gymnastics into this. Because when people say that, a lot of times what they mean is that we need to believe in Jesus really, really hard, like you believe in a wish to make it come true, right? Throw the coin in the pond, and if you believe really hard, then you'll get your wish. Or you need to believe in the right way, like a recipe or a magic spell, and if you believe in the right way, then your wish will come true or whatever. This is much more raw, I think, and grounded, and really more human than that. Trust that Jesus was right and that his way is good. Trust that Jesus was right and that his way is good. And this makes more sense because it leads to what comes right after it, the action. If we trust that Jesus is right and his way is good, what will we do? Love. Love. Now, interestingly, the word believe is in a tense that means it happens once and then it's done. Something happens in the present one time, begins, and then it's over. Beginning and an end, done. But the word love is in what's called the continuous present tense, and it means ongoing, always. Always unfolding. It's what's called an active present. I just want to offer a quick image that I think helps us get at how this works. It's beautiful outside. For those of you who were at the brunch this morning, it was awesome. A handful of us were at Fireside Moonrise last night. When the highs are in the mid-70s and the lows are in the what? Mid-50s? 60s? It's gorgeous. Most of the rest of the country calls this summer. We have bonfires. So, a little bit of a mismatch. But I am a pyromaniac from way back, so when it gets to this season, amazing. For my birthday, I built myself a fire in my backyard. That was my gift to myself. Nobody bothered me. I started with a really thin, tiny sticks and the Boy Scout method, TB. It was amazing. If you've ever tried, and you're all going to deny it, but I know there's at least a handful of us in here, like the Bear Grylls or the Survivor Man or MacGyver kind of fire starting, rubbing sticks together, or like shaving off a piece of magnesium and then trying to strike flint at it, like the 1 in a million chance you're going to hit it. It's horrible. You can't imagine how people survive. Natural selection should have weeded us out before we came up with those stupid ideas. But it reminds us how fleeting that spark is. If you've been rubbing sticks together for hours just to get that little ember, or if you have that little spark from trying to shave. We need it just for a split second, just the breath of ignition. But once it's going, you don't need the spark anymore. We don't throw lit matches into bonfires. That's ridiculous. We just don't do it. I do that, but I wanted to use it for the example. Let me be clear, it's fun to sort of flick them off the box, but we don't need to, is the point. Once it's going, what you need is not a spark. You need wood. You need wood to keep fueling and funding the flame. And I would also add, it doesn't hurt to have a fire stoker like myself, or Dave, or Peter Bagala, or I learned last night, Dan Vaughn. People who can't leave it alone. Picking, prodding, adding, stirring up ash and embers on everybody else, but they're having a blast. That's what they're on this earth to do, is to tend the fire. And so here I think is how it works. I think belief is like the spark. It has to happen before the flame. It's what comes before the flame. But if you rely on the spark to produce light or to cook food, you're in trouble. And I think if you also rely on the spark of belief and only belief, you're in real trouble. Knowing, what this author is talking about, knowing, this deep experience of life, knowing is the flame. And I think living in love is what it means to feed the fire. Living love, every act of love is a log on that fire. So belief is important. We want to get to the point of knowing, to that deepest experience of life, and the only way we can feed that is to continue stacking those logs. Now let me say this. If all you have is believing, and belief can take so many forms. It's not just believing that Jesus is right and his way is good. Believing is any number, as we've learned recently, of ideologies or systems or philosophies or worldviews. If all you have is believing but no love, it does you no good. You're throwing sparks into the dark. There is no substance to catch. There is no practice. There is no form of life. You're sort of sparking into nothingness. So belief, trust that the way of love is right, that the way of love is good. It ignites this fuel of living in love, of acting in love, not word or speech, but in action and reality. This is how the fire is fed. And knowing is the flame. Knowing is this deep experience of a life of love, of goodness, of oneness, the experience of the unconditional, an experience of life that we might call by the name of God. These authors call it eternal life. Unfortunately, I have to say one more thing. it is also possible to start another kind of fire. If the spark is belief in the way of hate, if that spark is belief in the way of fear, and if living in hate and fear become the fuel, the actions and the reality that feed the fire, it will produce a flame of violence and destruction. And the danger, what we've learned, and I feel like we've been saying this for months now, is that hate is easy. Hate is so much easier than love. And it's attractive at times. It feels good, and I'll admit, I've hated this week. I've hated in the last months. There's something powerful about feeling hate and letting yourself feel it. And it's seductive because it seems to want you to believe that it is an inexhaustible source of fuel for the fire of violence and destruction and dehumanization. But that flame cannot warm. It can only burn. It cannot nourish. It can only poison. It cannot give life. It can only take it. And it cannot sustain light. It can only consume it. Belief is important. It's very important because it sets us on a path. If we believe Jesus is right, if we believe the way of love, even love for our enemies, and let's pause to take stock of what we mean when we say that. If we believe even love for our enemies is right, if that way is good, if we believe that that way of love is the way to eternal or unconditional or sacred life, the depth of life, that sets us on a path. That enrolls us in the school of love. It employs us in the laboratory of love. It sets us ablaze with love. And the experience of knowing that life of love is the flame. This experience, this knowing, is marked by warmth and wellness and nourishing and life-giving and sustaining light. And with such division, so many people in our country rightly afraid, feeling threatened, dehumanized, terrorized, and alone, I think we find ourselves again at a moment of belief. I don't think we need to talk a ton about it. I don't think we need a 6-week series on believing the right things. I think it's a spark. I think it could be tonight that we choose to believe again. I think we're at a crossroads moment where belief really matters. To choose in this moment to set ourselves again on this path. To strike the flint of our own choice and agency into the darkness, hoping that there is love there to catch. Hoping that we can stack some of the logs of our own choices to love well. Because sure, we can respond to hate and fear with hate and fear. We have that option. But we will have to admit that this is not the way of love. To love is to refuse to play this same game of judging and dehumanizing and scapegoating the other. Love is to refuse to return hate for hate. But, and this is a big one, at the same time, refusing to return hate for hate, love does not mean a passive acquiescence to the now raging fire of hate that threatens to burn and poison, to take and consume and violate us and our loved ones. Love in action, in reality, Cornel West says justice is what love looks like in public. Justice is love with its boots on, right? It's ready to get to work. And so love in action and reality, while we can refuse to play that game, while we can refuse to feed the fire of hate, while we can refuse to return hate for hate, love and its relationship with justice mean that we also stand against the horrific promises that have been celebrated in this sickening anticipation of the world that might become in the aftermath of this election cycle. To stand against the acceptability of hatred and bigotry, racism, sexism, homophobia, xenophobia, the list goes on. To stand against and speak the truth of love to power Should that power try to remove protections and equality from our LGBTQ brothers and sisters? Should it regress to sexually repressive and predatory ways of being men and women? To xenophobic or Islamophobic exclusivity, open discrimination against minorities, refugees, foreigners, immigrants? Those who share with us not only the potential for contributing to the greatness of our nation, to the common good, but all those who share with us the only thing that should matter: humanity. At the end of the day, I think this is the truth and the invitation. Hate cannot be legislated. Love cannot be legislated. We throw the spark. We feed the fire. We live with the flame. Individually and as a community, we throw the spark. We feed the fire, and we live with the flame. That comes from here. That's not decided in Washington, D.C. That's not decided in Tallahassee. That's decided when Larry is willing to admit that he's hated. When we're willing to admit we feel the things we feel, but we're willing to choose again in this moment to live lives of love. Only we can choose which way we love. We can participate in democracy from a place of hate or love, from fear or hope, but not both. Not both. Haley Graves wrote this week, and it kind of hit home with me, so I'm just going to share it. Last leg. This is it. Landing the plane. She writes this: if you voted for Trump, I love you. If you voted for Clinton, I love you. If you didn't vote at all, I love you. If you're gay, I love you. If you were born in a different country, I love you. If your skin color doesn't match mine, I love you. No matter who you are, no matter what you believe, I love you, because you are the same as me, human. I refuse to let the differences separate me from my fellow man. This is not how we were intended to coexist. Whether or not you're satisfied with the election results, go out in your community and be the change you want to see. One man cannot destroy the country single-handedly if that's what you believe is going to happen. Love is the most powerful weapon in the world, and when used by an army, can conquer anything. Donald Trump did not separate us. Hillary Clinton did not separate us. Barack Obama did not separate us. Our hardened, bitter hearts have separated us. We have separated us. Together, we change the world. Jesus' meal practice sets him apart and draws him all sorts of criticism and scorn. He was scandalous. Not only did he eat with the ones the establishment had rejected, he ate with the establishment. With Trump and Hillary, he ate with the racist supporters and the elitists who hated them. He ate with the Ivy League politicians and the bigots that hated them. He broke bread. He offered a cup. And he said, "Remember me." Throw the spark of love. Feed the fire of love. Live in the flame of knowing this life of love by experience. The table has been set for us tonight. It is open to us and all people. And before you come, I would ask you to spend a moment thinking about what that means. That if we really mean that, if anyone is welcome at this table, who it is that you might encounter at this table. Because it's open to them too. and no one will ever be turned away. No one will ever be turned away. When you're ready, you can come and grab a piece of bread and dip it in the cup.